Hi, I'm Lisa Hamilton, President of the U.S. Virgin Islands Hotel and Tourism Association. So CHTA's market intelligence and data resources give us insights into really important information like airline capacities, market demand, even guest satisfaction. And so these tools, they give us the insights that we need. So we've got a couple of tools in their tool shed called the Caribbean Travel Tourism Report, as well as MasterCard's Tourism Insights Report. They give us really trusted, critical data that helps our members and the association to make smart decisions. It's a very competitive marketplace out there. We need every edge we can get. And frankly, I rely on CHTA for all of their market intelligence.
Good morning, and thank you for joining today's CHTA Live Masterclass. My name is Vanessa Ledesma, CEO of the Caribbean Hotel and Tourism Association. Welcome. Today's topic is Caribbean tourism industry stewardship in preserving and protecting coral reefs. The session is being recorded. The recording will be distributed to all attendees within 24 to 48 hours of the session, and all of the presentation slides that our speakers will be sharing today. We will be taking all questions via the Q&A chat. So we ask that if you have a question that you can please post it on the Q&A area, and this will be brought forward towards the end of the session. If for some reason we are unable to go through all of the questions, we will include them in the distribution email that will go out to all attendees. Without further ado, at this point, I would like to introduce our moderator and also a speaker for today's session, Frank Comito, Special Consultant to CHTA and CAST. Frank, thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa, and good morning to everyone. We're really pleased to be here and to hopefully provide some insights and learn ourselves a little bit more about the matters we'll be discussing. We're going to dive right in because we have some limited time, and all the presentations will be shared with you afterwards, as well as some additional support information. I'll get into that a little bit later. So basically, CHTA got involved in the whole area of coral reef restoration and management, probably more later in the game than we should have, but nevertheless, it started with our collaboration and partnership in 2018 that we established with the Nature Conservancy. And it's been a good learning trail for us as well in the process. So we're going to learn a little bit about the background about all of our initiatives and 3 organizations that will be presenting today, and some resources, intelligence, and other kinds of insights that they can provide. So I'm going to start right away with our first presenter. Will be from the United Nations Environmental Program, Linda Johnson. Linda is, let me get this right, the Marine Ecology Specialist for UNEP. And they've been terrific supporters of all of our organizations in a variety of ways, and we're really appreciative. She'll give you a little bit of insight on what they're doing in that whole realm. Linda. You ready to go?
I am seeing Linda, but I'm seeing her.
Good evening, everyone. I don't know if you can see my
Gotcha.
or hear me now. I think there was a bit of a glitch with the internet. I'm so sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. I hope I didn't interrupt anyone. Yes, so like Frank mentioned, my name is Linda Johnson, and I work as a marine ecosystem specialist here at UNEP in Nairobi. And yeah, hence the bad internet connection right now because we're approaching the rainy season. So apologize for any interruption here. Yes, so just to briefly introduce you to some of the things that we've been working on relating to coral reefs in the past year. So in 2022, UNEP, TNC, and CHTA produced a report called A Guide to Coral Reef Restoration for the Tourism Sector. And this was basically launched to present coral restoration best practices backed by scientific research, practitioners' experience, and stakeholder input. So it addressed barriers that up till then had hindered the Caribbean tourism sector from substantially engaging in efforts to conserve the very marine environments that draw millions of visitors to the region each year. And it also revealed key opportunities for the industry during a critical time when developing sustainable tourism practices not only helps to reverse years of degradation in the Caribbean reefs, but also help tourism-dependent businesses to survive and prosper after the economic fallout of COVID-19. So to us, this report was very important as healthy coral reefs are essential for the Caribbean tourism industry, which drives local economies and support hundreds of thousands of livelihoods throughout the region. So yeah, that's one of the things, and this is available online for anyone who's interested to read. And another practical example on the next slide is the UNEP ICRI Small Grants Program. So for those of you who don't know, ICRI is the International Coral Reef Initiative. So together with them, we launched this program to support the conservation and restoration of coral reefs, mangroves, and seagrass. And grants were awarded to projects aimed at protecting and restoring coastal marine ecosystems, with a particular emphasis on ecosystem payment for ecosystem services, ecosystem restoration, blue carbon, marine protected area, locally managed marine areas, and actions on UNEP's strategic pillars, which are climate stability, living in harmony with nature, and a pollution-free planet. And so far, we've had 2 rounds of these grants, and the first round was in 2017, and the second in 2021. And these grants were available to governments, NGOs, community groups, for projects implemented in developing countries, least developed countries, and small island developing states. And we also favor those proposals that implement the UNEP guidelines on best practices, which you can also read more about on our website regarding the small grants. So in 2017, we implemented projects in Malaysia, Mesoamerican Reef, Kenya, New Caledonia, and in the Western Indian Ocean. And in 2021, we significantly upscaled this program to become 10 individual projects in Belize, Costa Rica, Haiti, the Gambia, Kenya, Madagascar, the Philippines, Fiji, and Solomon Islands, which TNC was actually carrying out a project in Haiti, which was really interesting on mangrove restoration, if anyone is particularly interested in that. So I think my time is up here, but thank you so much. And if anyone wants me to send any links or anything, please feel free to let me know in the chat. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much, Linda. And the presentations will all be available, as I've indicated earlier. And if you have any questions, you can post them as we go along, and we'll get to them in a discussion session a little bit later. Certainly, the work we've done at CHTA would not have been possible to get to this point without the support of our collaborating partner on this with the Nature Conservancy. And at this point, and they've taught us quite a bit, and hopefully we've taught them a little bit about the tourism industry as well. But at this point, we'd like to invite Dr. Elizabeth Shaver to present. She's the I'm going to let her tell you who she is. I can't read my handwriting here. Go ahead, Liz.
Can you see my slides okay?
Yep.
All right, great. Well, thank you, Frank. Nice to be here. I'm Dr. Elizabeth Shaver. I'm the Coral Conservation Program Manager for the Nature Conservancy's Caribbean Division. And I'm here to share a little bit about our work in the Caribbean as it relates to coral reef restoration, and specifically how that connects to the tourism sector. I'll have to do this really quickly. I'll start by just sharing a little bit about where we work in the Caribbean, and it's quite a spread. We do work across the world. I should just start with that, in 70 countries and territories globally. But within the Caribbean division, we actually have 6 offices where we have staff located in the Bahamas, Jamaica, the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, U.S. Virgin Islands, and Grenada. But we work also through really close partnerships in many more countries than this, all of those that you see here in dark blue, totaling about 17 countries and territories. And the work that we do, we like to think of that as really falling within three categories of our strategic plan, which are focused around marine management and fisheries, coral conservation and restoration, and climate change adaptation and mitigation. And coral is really pulled out here because it is so critical as an ecosystem to the health and well-being of people and nature in the Caribbean. And it's really impossible actually to disentangle the health of reefs and the health of people while not including the tourism sector and the economic engine that tourism drives in the Caribbean. So in 2018, TNC looked to quantify this to get a better idea of what does that value look like. So Mark Spalding and his team from TNC, along with JetBlue, Microsoft, and the World Travel and Tourism Council, put out this report on the value of reef-adjacent tourism in the Caribbean and found that every year, coral reef tourism accounts for $8 billion of revenue from 11 million people every single year. That's about 23% of all tourism expenditure is related to coral reefs, and that is equal to about 10% of the GDP revenue in the Caribbean region. So a really huge amount of value. If you look at this on a square kilometer basis, so every square kilometer of reef in the Caribbean is bringing in about, on average, 660 visitors, and is valuing about $473,000. And this is from a 2018 study. Of course, then COVID happened, but I think since then we are probably back up to pre-pandemic or past pre-pandemic tourism in some locations. And so it would be really interesting to redo this and see how that's changed, but quite a lot of value that coral reefs, healthy coral reefs, provide to the tourism sector and to just the general economic engine of the Caribbean. So with our partners, CHTA, and with the generous support of the UN Environment Program, we really sought to connect our coral conservation and restoration work with the tourism sector. Linda luckily already talked a lot about this guide to coral reef restoration for the tourism sector and did a really nice overview of that. This slide just shows the link where you can find that guide. That's open access. I also wanted to share another guide that TNC has produced along with many other partners, which is a manager's guide to coral reef restoration planning and design. And this guide goes a little bit more in depth into planning and design and thinking about the impacts of climate change in that process if you're interested to look at that. I really highly recommend this other resource as well. This is through the Reef Resilience Network, which is a TNC program in partnership with the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA. It's our coral restoration online course. It's free of charge, open access. If you go on conservationtraining.org and you type in the search the search function coral restoration, it will pop up. It's 7 lessons spanning an introduction to restoration, field-based and land-based nurseries, assisted sexual reproduction or larval-based restoration, physical reef restoration, emergency response restoration, and monitoring for coral reef restoration. It's an amazing resource. It's done with experts from across the field all around the world, and it's updated every 2 years. And then another just a little plug for our Reef Resilience Network. This is a really amazing resource for anyone that's looking to get more information, not just on restoration. There's a host of restoration related information, but anything related to coral reefs. On the Reef Resilience Network webpage, you can find toolkits on a huge number of different topics, fisheries, sustainable tourism, MPAs. This image doesn't even show you all the toolkits that are available. There's really a lot. There's also a large webinar database, case studies, and article summaries available. And if you are interested, if you go to reefresilience.org/howwework, the bottom of that page, you can enter your email and you can be on the newsletter. And from that, you'll get information every time there's a new webinar, a new toolkit, a new online course. There's also just regular newsletters every couple of months sharing a whole host of information. So I highly recommend that resource for coral reef restoration and conservation related information as it can pertain to tourism operators looking to learn more or be more conservation related in their work. And with that, just want to say thanks for the time, and you can find my email here as well as other ways to get more information about TNC in the Caribbean. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. It's just packed with a lot of great information and insights. The quick question for you though on the coral restoration online course. Is that something that say a dive operator or a marina operator or a hotel with water sports operations, all and they're located right near a reef and so on. Is that something that would be applicable to them? Would it be helpful? Or is it more scientific?
Some aspects are quite scientific, but I do think that you could use it to get a high level overview of what the process looks like, why we do restoration, and what are some of the general ways in which restoration is done. So I still think it's applicable. For people that are looking to maybe start restoration, it's a great place.
Right. So a guy like me could go in there and fail the course and nobody would know. Is that correct? Okay. Our next presenter is with another one of CHTA and CAS's partners, the Caribbean Alliance for Sustainable Tourism, Dr. Ulrika Klaus, who is with the Caribbean Biodiversity Fund, and we're really pleased that they're moving into this arena. They've been doing some work into it, moving even more so into it, and we're going to learn a little bit more about what they're up to. Ulrika.
Thank you, Frank. So the Caribbean Biodiversity Fund, it is an umbrella environmental fund with a flexible structure to implement innovative solutions for resource mobilization in the Caribbean through a range of financial instruments. Currently, the CBF manages $167 million, and together with a group of national conservation trust funds, form the Caribbean Sustainable Finance Architecture. So basically, we are a regional donor organization with the mission to ensure continuous funding for conservation and sustainable development in the Caribbean. And that is with a vision to the Caribbean where both the natural environment and people can thrive. So we have a social component to that. We have 3 programs. The oldest is the Conservation Finance Program that is rooted in an endowment fund of just over $80 million originally from the German government. That has since been enhanced by several projects that are thematically related, and it is being invested through an asset management company. So it has grown to over 100 million. And that is really the sustainable finance architecture. So when Caribbean countries want, or organizations in the Caribbean want help to set up their own sustainable conservation fund at the national level, we help them to set it up to international standards. There are standards for national conservation trust funds. And once they have the basic structure in place, governance in place, they can harvest from the revenue from the investment to start their own grant-making process. And as they mature, they have to learn, bring in their own funding up to the 50-50 match under the 3rd partnership agreement. So it is a maturation and institutional capacity building process. We are currently working with 11 countries. You can see the flags there. Cuba is a little bit pale because we are still figuring out how to transfer funds into Cuba without reaching any of the embargo conditions, but we are very close to achieving that. The other two programs, climate change is the one I'm heading, and nature-based economies, are both rooted in sinking funds, again from the German government through KfW, the German Development Bank. The climate change program has the ecosystem-based adaptation facility. We have originally 60 million. Because it's a sinking fund, we are spending down on it. We have a market value of 40 million, around 40 million right now, which is also being invested, but less so for revenue. And to some extent, yes, but more so for liquidity, because we give grants directly to organizations eligible organizations in eligible islands. And there we are limited by the donor to the insular Caribbean countries on the OECD DAC list. So they are the overseas development eligible countries. And the same rules apply for achieving circular economy, which is a new sinking fund. They just selected the first projects for the first call for proposal, and later this year we'll launch a second call for proposal. The EBA facility has completed 4 calls for proposal, and one is being assessed right now. That was the other meeting I was in earlier. So out of the 34 projects that we have awarded so far, 22 have a coral conservation and restoration component. The grants have gone to 18 beneficiary organizations in 9 countries. And you see these 9 countries differ from the previous slide. The reason for that is that the ODA list does change about once a year, and also there used to be a transitional rule. Once an island slipped off it, they could still be part of a regional project and get a percentage of the funding. This is no longer allowed under the 5th call for proposal. So that's why you see some islands different there. What have we achieved so far? I would not go so far as saying that we have achieved restoration, because that is very much a long-term process that needs many more years. And of course, the last 2 years with the massive bleaching undid a lot of our good efforts. But we certainly helped to prevent extirpation of the acroporids, that is the staghelm and elkhorn coral in particular. They are on the IUCN list of critically threatened species. And our nurseries have better survival than the reefs in the wild. We also maintain and enhance coral genetic diversity by bringing those corals together so they can naturally reproduce from different genetic clusters. And there's also assisted sexual reproduction in the lab or land-based facilities before we plant. We have created nature-based livelihoods, trained a lot of young people in diving up to rescue diver level and as coral gardeners. Many of them left and got jobs in the hotels, which, when a project ends, of course, they look for other jobs, and sometimes they pay better in the hotels, but we don't mind. We are glad that those youth get a chance. And we focus, because of our mission, we focus on the vulnerable groups. We could probably implement the projects more quickly if we took secondary school graduates with 5 CXCs, maths, English, and biology, but we actually go to the communities, marginalized communities. Some of these don't have a school leaving certificate. They're functionally illiterate, and we still get them trained to that level. So I think that is worth mentioning. And we are quite active in knowledge sharing. And here I'd like to point out the Caribbean Coral Health Forum, which was set up last year as a space for CDF beneficiaries, coral reef conservationists, enthusiasts to discuss and share experiences in coral health matters. So anybody here in this round who's interested in signing up, either go on our website or use this QR code, and you will be directed to a sign-up form where we ask a few questions: why you are motivated and what your interests are, where you're based, etc. We currently have 86 members. I expect this to go up to at least 88 today or tomorrow because I had 2 inquiries earlier. Those members receive an e-newsletter, which still doesn't have a regular frequency, but yeah, we're working on it. It is a young network. We also have a WhatsApp group for the people more inclined to exchange directly and more proactively. That has 37 members. So when you sign up on the form, you will be asked if you want to join it or not. We don't want to spam people. And I like to point out that we are part of a larger network. So we don't try to compete with any of the other networks that are out there. And the Reef Resilience Network is very, very popular by our membership, and very rightly so. When we launched, we actually launched it in an event together with the Global Coral Reef Monitoring Network, and one of our members and CBF staff is on the board of the Global Coral Reef Monitoring Network. So we are interested in strong partnerships, and that is also where we see the role and the collaboration with the Caribbean Hotel and Tourism Association and with CAST, because these organizations and their members can play an important role in coral research, being strong partners with evidence-based information. And you may have seen one of our grantees, Clear Caribbean, has put out a survey on social media to map staghorn corals, surviving staghorn corals, again, to look for those that we haven't found as yet and enhance and maintain the genetic diversity of this seriously threatened species. And with that, I thank you and look forward to your questions.
Great. Thank you, Ulrika. That's a lot of great information. The question on the network that you set up, what are some of the kinds of topics or areas that those that are involved in it tend to bring up or want to discuss?
Well, on the newsletter, we sort of flag coral news that we collate from other social media and our calls for proposal, etc. In the WhatsApp group, it is very much up to the members. Mm-hmm. So yes, if there is a call for proposal or a webinar like this webinar, definitely we put it in there for people to be aware of it. And very often the discussion takes off on very technical matters that they discuss whether rope nurseries are better than any other way of in situ nurseries, and the expert and practitioners would exchange the back and forth, and yeah.
Very good. Very good. I want to remind the audience that you can post any questions on the Q&A box down there, and we'll get to them in a little bit. And also remind you that all these presentations and other support information will be shared with the folks within 48 hours. And I guess I'm up now at this point, so give me a second to share my presentation. Thank you, Ulrika. I'm going to skim through this because, again, this is going to be a leftover document for you, and you'll be able to tap into it even more so. What I'm going to cover basically is just very briefly about CHTA and our Caribbean Alliance for Sustainable Tourism's focus, a little bit about what we've done with some coral reef-related initiatives, some of which has been discussed, so I'll skim over that, but also spending a little bit more time to discuss the key findings and recommendations from a review that CHTA and the TNC undertook recently on creating an enabled environment to support the tourism industry's role in coral reef management. CAST was established over 25 years ago by Frank Ranieri, Punta Cana Group and Punta Cana Foundation, and also Sir Royston Hopkin out of Grenada, a hotelier. And basically, its early focus was on helping to understand and broaden the awareness about sustainable matters with the industry, and putting in place training for about 7-8 years on helping hotels to put in place environmental management systems. And that was quite extensive, and lots of research and information went into that. And then you can see, I'm not going to go into all of these, but you can see the range of things that we've been involved in over the years, off and on. Most of it under the radar. We could be above screen a little bit more than we are, but but we have been in playing some level of a role in broadening industry's awareness and so on. As I indicated earlier, we began becoming interested more so in coral reef related initiatives, particularly with that economic impact report that Elizabeth shared with you. It's just quite comprehensive. It's not only the economic impact and environmental impact, but also social impacts. And we really realize that we need to broaden the awareness of the industry, and by extension, the industry's reach into tourists, the industry's reach into employees and so on, and communities and so on, to play a much more proactive role in this arena. So around that, we've done a number of things that are listed here, and there's a link there to a resource center, a knowledge sharing center on portal on the CHTA website that's dedicated to cast-related matters, and there are a number of things in there on coral reef management and restoration guidance. What we've undertaken from some of our research, what we've learned from some of our research undertaken a couple of years ago, that we kind of pointed out the barriers and the opportunities that exist for our industry specifically to be better players in this area. Certainly the lack of coral reef conservation technical capacity and knowledge sharing and is important, and our industry needs to understand more of that. Their limited awareness of how they can collaborate and be effective partners as well creates opportunities. The need to expand governmental, employee, community, and policy support for coral restoration. And we can play a key role in that, as well as we've done a lot of other matters with the region over our 60-year history, 60 plus years. The need for increased marine policy enforcement in partnership with the tourism sector, and we're seeing more of that. We've seen a lot of that over the years, particularly with the marina sector, but we're seeing more of that, and then the dive sectors, but we're seeing more of that. And there's an opportunity for the industry not to be the enforcer, but to be the propagator of information that helps to enforce, and also sharing information on lack of enforcement with the appropriate authorities. And the barriers for all of us on all these kinds of things are limited access to funding, but we're finding new and innovative ways through our research as to how that's being addressed. Partnering with the tourism sector has the potential to implement sustainable coral reef restoration projects, to engage the tourism operators, employees, and tourists through hands-on restoration activities, which has to be done carefully, and to connect with millions of people about the importance of coral restoration, and the guides there as well, which we had talked about earlier. So what I wanted to talk about at this point is a review we undertook last year to basically do comprehensively and analyze and identify the current policy, legislative, regulatory, and operational obstacles creating enabling positions for policy changes and revisions to support coral reef restoration with the engagement of the tourism sector with the scientific community. And we received support from the UNEP, and we conducted a detailed analysis specifically targeted on what was going on and we received input from government officials, tourism-related public and private sector representatives, and NGO representatives in 3 specific destinations that we wanted to target because of the variance of approaches that they're taking as well: the Bahamas, the Dominican Republic, and Jamaica. And what I'm going to share with you are a little bit, just a general overview, but you will receive within 48 hours the detailed analysis and reports from these 3 destinations. And it's quite extensive, and I think can be instructional for any destination. And it's instructional as well for your destination as well, if you're one of those 3, to look at what the others, the findings and recommendations from the others, because there will be applicability, I would imagine, for some of that to everybody. So we want to identify policy and operations, identify key regulatory and governing bodies, and with that assessment, identify and articulate opportunities or strategies. What we found going across everybody of the 3 destinations was the importance of strong, strengthened policy framework for tourism and coral reef restoration management and regulations, and the detailed reports get into specifics around that. We basically looked at items 2 and 3 there speak a lot to the issue of collaboration and coordination and working together. And that was a success factor in several of the destinations that we looked at in detail, how important that was, or how important it would be to even strengthen that as they continued their collaboration. We looked at basically an overriding area was capacity building, the need for training, orientation, more of that, both at the local level and regionally by groups like ours, all of our partners here in that area, and today is part of that effort as well. In item number 5, again, we talked about it earlier, the need to broaden the coordination, the awareness, and using our bully pulpit, if you will, to broaden the sensitivity, awareness building, and so on, not only within our communities and our companies and so on, but also with tourists, which I think we underestimate the ability to broaden awareness that way. And the dive communities in several destinations are doing wonderful work in that area, in educating and making people aware of our responsibilities and the contribution which reefs make to in a very broad sense to our countries. The other areas are basically how it ties in, recommendations on how it ties in with the other sustainable practices, climate change mitigation, and innovative approaches that can be and are being undertaken. And crossover recommendations also focused on funding and investment and public and private sector advocacy support, which is being provided in some areas, but also could be broadened and provided in other ways. And finally, there were the 3 destinations were studied basically called for a greater regional policy dialogue on the regulatory frameworks. And today's part of introducing some of that. I'm not going to get into the details on this, but basically you can see the areas with each of the destinations, the blue part on the left side there, the areas of focus that that the detailed studies hone in on, and you see those 15 areas there as well. And all of this will be shared with you more in detail. What I want to share with you is basically the ideal coordination schemes based on our look. And Jamaica's only there as just this is a placeholder kind of thing for this, but in general, what we've seen in the 3 destinations is when there's a coordinating NGO entity that we're seeing tremendous potential results from that happening. And we've seen that, for example, in the Bahamas with the Perry Institute, with the Cape Eleuthera Foundation and the Reef Resilience Network and so on, all collaborating basically around an NGO or NGOs basically that then connect and work with these various other circles around them. In some cases, it's with the organized tourism sector in the Bahamas, by example, with the support of the Bahamas Out Island Promotion Board and Nassau Paradise Island Tourism Board and the Hotel and Tourism Associations in the jurisdictions as well. By example, in the area of the DR, the Punta Cana Foundation is one of the core types of groups that basically does this kind of coalescing, information sharing, coordination types of efforts, and we've seen it with some other areas in the DR as well. I think it's the Dominican Consortium and the Dominican Reef Network as well that play a key role in that kind of information sharing, coordination, and so on. And in Jamaica, we've seen it more at the company level. We see companies like Iberostar, Sandals, the Jamaican Inn, the Orabesca effort, Marine Trust as well, basically playing key roles in all of that. But it's important as well. You'll see local dive centers. I would add as well, marina operators as well are key parts of that ideal kind of coordination effort. And the international entity, like we're talking with today, our regional and international resources can tie into this very effectively. And where we're seeing good collaborations, we're seeing all of that happening with the science basically helping to guide it, because this has to be guided by science, and the industry has to respect and understand that. And likewise, helping the scientific community to understand the role and the opportunities that present within the tourism community. And I'm just about wrapping up here, but just overarching recommendations for a regional approach is to build awareness of the tourism sector, public and private sectors, strengthen our capacity to be advocates and be key players in all of this, allow environment and tourism a space to understand each other. That's really important in collaborations and partnerships. It's a learning process. Sometimes it's even painful because of differences of views and so on. But the common ground is much more overarching than areas of differences. And the opportunity to collaborate presents an opportunity to strengthen our understandings amongst one another and strengthen the policy framework as well. And we all become, hopefully, win-win. It's a win-win situation for everyone. Around that regional dialogue, it must have the involvement, in our view, of the tourism industry stakeholders, and to discuss regulatory frameworks, best practices, institutional capacity governance, and innovative funding mechanisms. All of that can help to seed some improvements to what's being done, but also some new kinds of efforts that can affect change. And to, in that exchange as well, and in all of this collaboration, exchange knowledge, attract donors, and foster collaboration and cooperation. So all of this is basically to encourage public and private sector stakeholders to better recognize the need for strengthened national policy frameworks and regulatory frameworks that specifically facilitate restoration with the participation of the tourism industry. As I indicated, the detailed guides will be shared with you. I think you'll, particularly those of you that are a bit geeky about all this stuff, you're going to find it incredibly helpful and useful. We were just really pleased with the depth and breadth of the research that was undertaken, and it's very representative of the views of all the stakeholders. So we encourage you to participate in gaining that information. So that's it right there. Liz, in particular, and anybody else, if there's anything you want to add to the general overview that I did on the initiative that we undertook, feel free to chime in at this point. I'm going to start with a couple questions, and I think we have a couple questions online as well. Liz, did I do the general overview, or is there anything else you want to add or?
No, you did a great job, Frank. I think that there's a lot of information in those policy analyses. So we are also sharing those after this webinar in case anyone wants to dig further. Yeah.
Great, very good. So let's see what we've got here. We've got some questions on the chat here, and let's start with. Hold on a second, with Mr. Anonymous. Okay. There's been a lot of dialogue on the survival rates of coral nurseries and the various methods. What is the best advice for successful building of a coral reef with the current issues of bleaching and large die-outs? We're in a crisis mode. We know that. How do we focus on what can really work and potentially have an impact in this situation, in this environment that we're in, with the warming waters and the acceleration of bleaching and disease that we're seeing in the reef environment? That sounds like a question for Ulrika.
Yeah, I can make a start at least. So yeah, the answer is really, it depends on where you are and what species you want to use. Now, I would say, but it might just be the phrasing of the question, we do not construct reefs, we reconstruct them. If they have been there before, we try to rehabilitate them. In terms of survival rates, yeah, again, it depends on context. The placement of the nursery is probably more important than the structure you use. The structure is important. If you have strong wave action, the rope nurseries are now becoming very popular, but there are also some dome-shaped nurseries that are very important when you have damselfish attacking your corals. So it really depends on your context, and it depends on the funding you have available. Rope nurseries, of course, are very economic, but table and other structures might be more easily shifted to deeper and cooler waters if that need arises. And of course, if you have land facilities, which are very expensive to set up, that is ideal because you can control the conditions. So we constantly have our experts on the WhatsApp group discussing these, and there is no silver bullet. It all depends on context.
Okay. Anyone else want to add to that? No? Okay. Great. Thank you. We have a question here from Andrew Ross. Andrew says, key here to scaling up is going to be direct ROI, return on investment, to the tourism entity, resort, hotel, bar, dive shop, whatever. This can be brand marketing, recreation, and aesthetics, but also protection, development of sandy beaches, including insuring them, often difficult to find and or prohibitively costly. That's a great comment, by the way. Why should the tourism industry get involved in this? What's the ROI on it? And that's part of our challenge in trying to get more engagement. But I mean, I think it's there is a direct economic environment. I mean, look at the research that Liz was referencing earlier. Take away the coral reef aspect of our offering, not only just for dive operators, but snorkeling, for beach erosion protection, all these kinds of things that have an economic impact and a cost impact on the industry. So yes, there's a direct financial application here. Now, the issue of insurance, I think, is an interesting one to look at because, and I know that there's some folks that are looking at that in the region. How do we also basically make sure that there's that aspect of the economics of it is covered in some fashion? I don't have an answer for that, but I know it is an issue that we should be looking at more closely. But it was great insights, Andrew. Thank you. I don't know if anyone else wants to comment on his points. No.
I could just jump in to say, yeah, we did talk about the direct tourism value. Of course, there's other values that are not in that report. There's fisheries value, and then there's also, as Frank mentioned, coastal protection value. But like that valuation is not even included in that 8 billion a year. And for hotels, specifically with infrastructure along the coastline, in many cases in the Caribbean, reefs are protecting those from major storm events and flood events. There's a lot of research from UC Santa Cruz and the USGS from Dr. Mike Beck, who has recently been doing a lot of simulations along coastlines looking at 100-year flood events, with and without coral reefs, with coral restoration. And when reefs are not present, it's the amount of flooding that you get is massive. Even just considering all aspects. So we know how important reefs are. I think, and Andrew, we've talked about this, it's how you communicate that. And I think how the tourism industry can, I think, really start to own that, the health of reefs for the values that they are receiving, the services that they're receiving.
Well, thanks for that. I have a quick question on when a reef dies, okay, how quickly does it take for storm surge, heavy wave action, and so on to bust that up and break through so you have this massive erosion and flooding? Is anybody have?
Yeah, I mean, over time, a coral reef will flatten, it will erode. And that's the at that flattening of a reef is where you're no longer getting the wave attenuation services. So that could take a couple of years to a couple of decades. It is also context dependent. Right.
And something like 90% of the wave energy is under the water. Is that something like that? I heard that.
97% of wave energy is baffled by coral reefs. By the reef crest.
Okay, very good. Okay, we have a question. Do we have any information or tracker of CHTA membership using and maintaining the coral best practices and results of their efforts? We know that there's been quite a number of folks that have downloaded the guide that we did. But one of the things we learned as well just recently is we learned that we learned from research that we did 2 years ago who was involved in it in the industry and who would like to be involved in the industry because they haven't been more directly involved. So we have reached out. That we actually just recently collated that database part of it, and our intention is to invite those folks to become more involved in the networks that we've talked about today and other kinds of information that's available. And also something that we're going to announce a little bit more formally later, but I can give a little indication of it. We're going to set up a recognition program for best practices in this whole area by the industry, and we hope to launch that in the coming months as well. So we're moving in that direction. Okay, we have a question here from. I'd be remiss if I didn't actually introduce and recognize the president of the acting chairperson and the deputy chair of the Caribbean Alliance for Sustainable Tourism, and also the chairperson for the Caribbean Biodiversity Fund, who happens to be a hotelier out of St. Lucia, Carolyn Trubetskoy. Hi, Carolyn. I know you can't talk, but we hear you. And as well, Carolyn is indicating that you can go to the Caribbean Hotel and Tourism Association Education Foundation website. If you just search CHTAEF, it'll pop up. And on that website, there are scholarships available to help basically with training and development of tourism industry representatives in the whole area of marine biodiversity and related matters to that. So if you go into there, you'll see some other resources that have been established, financial resources to help with your efforts. Let's see. We have a question here. Oh, a comment from Sylvina and Miguel in Canuon. We recently were victims of a C5 hurricane, and our reef saved us from catastrophe. What more do we need to know? You know. We have a question from Frank. Coral sin in the Caribbean are branching, so you may have lost the protection with coral death in 1 or 2 storms. Okay, I can see that. Is the stakeholder register public? I'm not quite sure which stakeholder register, but we'll get back to you on that. So, I mean, we've had some great questions and insight, and I have a couple questions here as well myself. Question on the value, because we probably have some scientific minds on here as well. The value of engaging tourists in assisting with reef restorations. What's the value and what are the precautions? If you can give me a little bit of insight on that, because I've heard folks say you got to be careful. They could go out there and do more damage than good. I'm playing devil's advocate here, so tell me what insights should our people have on that type of engagement?
Maybe I should chime in here. I've seen both positive and negative effects. Yes, I mean, diving always has the risk that people step on the corals and do physical damage to them.
Right.
But I've also seen, and yeah, the SUNIC say the PADI reef restoration certification only feeds into the pockets of PADI, but nobody else. But I've seen exactly that certification bridge the gap between projects. Because, yeah, there was one coral restoration project funded by the French in St. Lucia. And when that project ended, and when, especially then after COVID, the only cleaning that those nurseries got were actually from the tourists who came in and brushed off to get their PADI certification. And also the adapter coral, if managed properly, can help with long-term funding of maintenance operations, which I find positive. But it has to be well managed, and the more tourists you have, the higher your risk of breakage, contamination, etc.
And even more reason for there to be training, orientation, and tapping into a network that can help you address how you do this more effectively as well. Anybody else want to chime in on that question? Okay.
Well, I think that we know that unsustainable amounts of tourism on reefs can sometimes cause damage to corals, but I think that we believe that there's a really great opportunity for the conservation sectors, and the tourism sector to work together. I think that the tourism sector has a really great opportunity. They're on the reef all the time, much more than a lot of the NGOs are. They know reefs so well. They're out there every day. They really, I think, as a sector, the tourism operators really have the ability to be really key allies in conservation and do a lot of really supportive, conservation-minded work and restoration too, whether it's partnering with a restoration group or leading restoration. The point is that you know, uh, you want to use best practices so that you are not damaging a reef any further, but know that you're doing the most scientifically sound methods to improve the reef where you are, you're taking tourists to. So there's a really great opportunity as long as the right kinds of methods and approaches are being used.
Very good. And one final question. We have a couple other questions that we'll answer after the fact. We'll get back to you. But the what's a good stepping stone approach to this? If I'm an industry, I can't go in there with massive amounts of resources and so on to set up a lab or whatever, do all that kind of stuff to have a real impact at that level. How do I step into this? What are some stepping stones I can take as I build into this area of being a player, if you will? Anybody?
You don't have to start with restoration. You don't have to end with restoration, right? You can start with simple, how can I do my tourism practices so that the least amount of damage possible is happening? Can you do things like making sure that you anchor in a sand flat or to a mooring buoy, and make sure that you're not anchoring on a reef, that your tourists are using reef safe sunscreen, that you're educating divers and snorkelers to not touch or kick corals or take anything from the reef environment. There's a lot of different ways that we can still be protective of a reef without necessarily starting a whole nursery. You could try to find NGOs or whoever's doing coral reef restoration. It could be an NGO, it could be the government, it could be a community group. You could find local restoration practitioners and see if there's any way that you can partner with them. Even if it's letting them know when you see some damage and there's some corals of opportunity that they could come and grab those corals and put them in a nursery. That's a great place to start.
Right.
Or even working with the government. If you're taking tourists out and you're regularly going to an MPA area, you could try to work with the government. If you see like illegal fishing in an MPA area, can you start to share that kind of information? I think that there's a lot of different ways that you can kind of like start to get involved in this kind of
Very good. Very good. Some practical steps. I really appreciate that, and I appreciate everyone who's participated today. We've kept it to an hour. I think that's fantastic. You're a good group, and the information, as we indicated, will be shared with everybody, and you'll be getting much more than we've shared right now as well with what you'll be receiving. And we encourage you to stay engaged, stay involved, and look at ways in which you can be a contributor to addressing some of the challenges we're having in this area. On behalf of CHTA, I want to thank Ulrike, Liz, Linda, Vanessa, and the team there at CHTA for helping us put this together. The entire presentation as well will be online as well and circulated as well. So we look forward to seeing more engagement. And I believe we're looking, Liz, we had discussed having another session that'll mine a little bit more deeper into the practical examples of what people are doing in this arena sometime in late May or early June. So we look forward to getting back to you with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much. Bye.